everyone, and welcome to This Week in Milwaukee Rising with Technically. I'm Sorrina Beecher, the lead reporter for the region, and every week we feature an amazing individual or group that is shaping Milwaukee's economic landscape and highlighting solutions to help build a more equitable and inclusive future. So I'm super excited this week because my guest is Caitlin Cullen. She's the new food center director at Kinship Community Food Center in the Riverwest neighborhood. And if her name sounds familiar, it's because she's the former owner and chef at Tandem Restaurant, which became very well known during the pandemic for serving free meals to their local neighbors in need. So, we're going to learn a lot more about Caitlin's new role and how we can work better together to solve food insecurity in Milwaukee and other social challenges. So, welcome, Caitlin. Thank you for joining me today.
What up? Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited you're here. I recently had a chance to see Kinship Food Community Center for myself. I was there for a tour. Tell us a little bit about Kinship Community Food Center.
Yeah. So the Kinship Community Food Center is what people used to know as the Riverwest Food Pantry. It's basically this little church basement in Riverwest that's been serving fresh produce, canned goods, meat, dairy, all of that to folks in the neighborhood for over 40 years. It started with some little ladies in the church basement who were just trying to help out their neighbors, and has really grown into a real community hub over the years. So we do operate a pantry where folks can come 2 times a week and get resources that they might need. But truly what we have identified is that if you're coming to the food center to get food, that is not the only thing you're facing, right? You could be dealing with trying to find a place to live, maybe gainful employment, maybe you're on a fixed income or SSI and you need to supplement what you've got to make it work. Maybe you're in a bad situation with a partner or a family member, all of these things. We all have a bunch of stuff just under the surface. And so the idea is, wouldn't it be neat if when people came into a space for a little bit of assistance related to food, we were able actually to foster more community and provide more assistance just by virtue of knowing one another, right? And being in each other's lives.
And a lot of times, the food pantries sort of have this reputation for kind of being ushered into the back room of a church or a basement to get food. How does Kinship differ from a typical food pantry?
Well, there's no standing in line, that's for sure. Or at least, I mean, it gets a little jammed up like it does at the grocery store. But we basically have folks come in, and when they first get there, they take a number. We got music playing. We've got coffee. If you're there on a Tuesday evening, we got dinner bar going on with healthy food that you can, that's nourishing and delicious too, not just like boring healthy, with stuff that's available at the food center. If you're there on a Saturday, it's breakfast bar. But we really kind of create this welcoming, inviting environment where people are interfacing with one another. You're having your coffee, you're having your little breakfast, and then your number gets called up. It's your turn to shop. And then you're looking at it not like a cattle call where you're running through a line waiting till someone puts food in your hand, but you're self-selecting, right? You're picking off a shelf. Oh, I want to do this today. Or what kind of meat do we have today? Oh, that whole chicken would go great with all these root vegetables. People are able to kind of shop like they would at a grocery store and get a meal and hang out in the meantime.
Sure. And when I was there, it was really lively. There was a lot of people talking and hanging out and catching up at the tables, which was really cool to see.
I think that was the day I put on New Edition radio too, so the
Yeah,
vibes
no,
were
you guys
elevated.
you guys definitely had the jams going. I always that. I'm sure they did too. What are some of the challenges facing the Riverwest neighborhood? Because it really did feel like sort of this little heart of the community, all these people coming together, which was really cool to see. But there's also a lot of challenges in the area too.
Yeah, I think Riverwest, there's a lot of research that's been done on it, but it's one of Milwaukee's, one of the nation's last integrated neighborhoods. And that means not just racial and ethnic diversity, but socioeconomically as well. And I think one of the issues facing folks in the community, especially now, is the changing face of the neighborhood. We use that bad G word, but a lot of folks who are purchasing homes in the community are not living in state, right? It's kind of a real speculators market. And so folks who have been renting in the community for 20 or 30 years, or who are, living in the house they grew up in now as adults and planning on living there their whole lives, Well, your tax assessment's changing, right? All of a sudden, you owe $6,000 a year on a place that you own free and clear. A lot of folks are limited to how much they can work, right? You might be able-bodied, young, and ready to get out there, but if you got two kids at home and they're not necessarily in daycare age yet, or you went through daycare as a young person and somebody did something to you and you're nervous about sending your kids to something like that, you might not be able to work a full-time job. You might be on disability, or you're at retirement age. You're 65 or older and your body can't have you go to a factory job anymore, and there aren't many factory jobs left. And you need to be able to live off your Social Security, which isn't designed to be lived off of. We really just see like a lot of folks who are truly working or receiving some sort of financing, but are really just under-resourced, underemployed.
Yeah, and I was fortunate to talk to one of the guests, and he was kind of explaining to me like I never thought I needed help, with getting groceries for a week, but I had a paycheck that felt short, and so he came into the center, and now he's also serving as a volunteer. What are some of the misconceptions about food insecurity in general?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about food insecurity. And a lot of us approach it from a place of what maybe we're told by people we trust and by sources we trust, like the television or the places that you read things. A lot of times folks think food insecurity is either because you lost your job this week and so you're insecure for that amount of time, you don't have a nest egg, or that you're almost intentionally food insecure, right? Like it's easier to get stuff handed to you than it is to go out and get it yourself. And truly, a massive population in the United States is food insecure all the time. You know what I mean? If you're one missed paycheck away from not being able to feed your family, I got to update, you were food insecure the whole time, not just when you missed a paycheck. And so our nation was predicated on a lot of ideas and ideals that are no longer true in the world we live in. You can't, our minimum wage is $7.25. I don't know the last time you made $7.25, but I could work 80 hours a week, get the overtime for that, and still not be able to afford to house and feed myself. And so in a world right now where there's a lot of nonprofit charity do-gooder assistance like ours that provides that safe space to get food, people got to decide when they're paying a bill, am I going to pay where I live? Am I going to pay the car that gets me to the job that pays where I live? Or am I going to pay for food? And SNAP benefits are awesome, but even those fall short, especially for larger families. And so people often choose to not pay for the food and have that support so that they can have shelter.
Sure, sure. And that also kind of brings me to, this in the central city, especially, is, food deserts being a reality and being far away from a place to get fresh fruit and produce, things like that.
And
So,
I push back on the concept of Milwaukee's food deserts a lot because
okay.
I think it's not that bad anymore, right? It just depends on which neighborhood to neighborhood, right? But the
Sure.
tandem was in Lindsay Heights, and people would often think of that as a food desert if you were just trying to map out spaces, right? Feeding America's got its headquarters right on that same block. But if you look around, there's 3 grocery stores within a square mile there. Grocery stores where you can get fresh produce. But folks often think of 5 through 205, 5 through 206 is that kind of thing. That's not so
Mhm.
true. You head a couple blocks west, maybe a mile and a half west, and you think, now we're in a food desert, but you're not. You got a Century Foods, you got a Pick and Save. Milwaukee is fairly resourced, at least in places to get grocery and fresh produce. It's overwhelmed by corner stores and liquor stores that sell honey buns,
Mhm.
which might be the easier thing. If that's 2 blocks away from your house and it's 8 blocks to walk to the grocery store, you're probably going to go to the corner store and grab what you need. But I think we're not really, at least at the Kinship Community Food Center, we're not serving because of a food desert issue. The east side has plenty of grocery stores. It's more, it's a desert if you can't afford it, right? It's a desert to you if you can get the honey bun for less than $1.
Sure.
And, to make breakfast with eggs, toast, and bacon for your family is going to run you more than that because that's the reality of the cost of food right now.
Sure. So in Milwaukee, and thank you for sharing that. In Milwaukee, it's more of a resource issue rather than. actually.
And there are, look, you get out to the northwest side, you keep taking Fond du Lac Avenue like a straight shot out, there'll be times where you could walk a mile to get to groceries, right? But and who wants to walk now in winter? We're really talking food desert because it's cold, and
Yeah.
you don't want to be walking out here a mile each way to get groceries. So I'm with that. But Milwaukee is fairly resourced, at least in the grocery stores that are available. I could throw a rock from where I'm sitting right now and hit Pete's Fruit Market, and that was a battle to get that
Yeah.
in there,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the tide is turning. There are more grocery stores than, say, a city like Detroit, where having a locally owned grocery store close to your house that has fresh produce is near impossible.
Yeah. So, in addition to sort of Kinship Community Food Center operating kind of like a market where people can self-select their food items, you guys also have an urban farm. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit more about that initiative?
Yeah, the urban farm is really cool. It started as a growing power farm. Will Allen, put up 11 hoop houses some dozen years ago, and it's changed hands a couple times. The folks at Groundwork Milwaukee actually were running the farm and kind of invited us to collaborate far before my time, so I could be wrong in the exact history of this, but invited what was the Riverwest Food Pantry to collaborate, to be a part of the farm, to receive a lot of the product. And then it really became an unbalanced relationship where we were receiving all this great stuff and they were running this farm that was taking all their time and energy and money. So this is our first year running the farm. Like it's been about a little more than a year since the farm has been run exclusively by the Community Food Center. And so it's cool, man. It's up on Port Washington Road, just north of the Home Depot. The Malio produce, Paul Malio is a really nice dude, and he's been letting us use that space, for nothing, just so we could help grow food for our community. And it's also more than just growing 12,000 pounds of produce a year, which is what it's growing. It's about getting people out of their element, right? We have a shopper van that we take every Thursday morning. And Natalie brews up some coffee and makes some breakfast bars or whatever and just starts driving around picking up folks who she's talked to throughout the week who want to get out of the city, and you're still in the city. You're just across the border in Glendale, but you get to get your hands in the dirt. I don't know, like every scientific study ever says fresh air and touching the ground is like good for you. And so that's also a really cool aspect of the farm, is that it allows people to get really involved in something they might have not touched before.
Sure.
And we get to host events out there a little bit too. So they're small. They're not like, big fundraisers or anything. It's we host a community meal every month together where we get shoppers, volunteers, different mentors who work in our Stride program, which is like our kind of crisis counseling assistance. Everybody just goes on this farm in the summer months and kicks it, and we make a meal together. And like everybody tried chive blossoms last time. That was a big hit. They're like, this is a flower. And I was like, yeah, you're going to like it. Trust me. Just try
it. Just give it a shot.
Yep.
Sharing a meal or serving meals has sort of been central to your career and how I came to know your name as well. You were the former owner of Tandem Restaurant in Lindsay Heights, like you said, and you're also a chef. Can you share a little bit about your journey and how you arrived to that point, or maybe what you were doing before you arrived at Kinship?
Yeah. Without going too deep into the weeds, I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin almost 10 years ago after being a high school English teacher and a high school principal, and thought that I wanted to try cooking for a living. Being in the education system had left me like really jaded, and also with like a nice little drug habit. And I just thought, like, I need a fresh start. I want to do something with my hands. I want to, I don't know, give something a try while I'm young and dumb enough to. And so I moved here with no money and didn't really know anybody except for two friends that I knew from college, and started applying for jobs and basically got hired with a fake resume at a bunch of these places just because I was able to type nice and make it seem like I knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked my way up over the course of 3 years in, like, Milwaukee's best kitchens, people who have, been nominated time and again for James Beard Awards, and uh, started to get bored with that and really kind of missed the educational component of what I used to do. And so I was young and dumb enough to say, like, here's an idea. I was able to do this and get all these jobs and work my way up because I'm white and I talk nice and I have a master's degree. Wouldn't it be neat if we just stripped away all of that artifice and instead opened the door and said, like, all right, you want to figure out how to cook, you want to work in the restaurant industry, you want to move to LA because you think that you're going to have a rap career, they need servers in LA too. Like, come in here, let's learn how to get a job that's pretty replicable, probably your first job. And I don't know, I learned how to cook on the job, let's see if you can too.
Mm-hmm. And that was at Tandem,
Yeah.
where you actually hired a lot of people right from the neighborhood. Of course, they're in Lindsay Heights. Unfortunately, like a lot of businesses, you were kind of struck by all of the hospitality, shuttering doors during the pandemic, and Tandem was also affected. But before you closed your doors, you ended up keeping them open to help feed neighbors in need. Can you tell us a little bit about what sort of inspired you to start doing that during, what I assume was probably a difficult kind of or disappointing time, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like, our business model was never good, right? I want to hire people as soon as they learn how to do something, they're going to go someplace else, and I got to teach somebody else for 4 months how to do the thing. So the tandem was always in a financial struggle spot, and we had overcome like every obstacle, and we really were turning the corner, heading into like the DNC was supposed to be in Milwaukee. You remember that? Like,
Yeah.
and we were hot shit. It was us. They were like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm thinking the Obamas are going to eat at our place." And then this thing happened, and I thought, well, okay, we're finally going out of business. We've thought it was going to happen 20 times before. This is
Mhm.
it. Writing's on the wall. And so we kind of, did the pivot that everybody did. I laid off most of my staff. I had folks self-select, like, do you have someone whose house you can live in, right? Or
Mhm.
do you have kids of your own and you're the breadwinner for your family? Okay, cool. If you have no other options, raise your hand. You're not fired. You know what I mean? You're not getting
Yeah.
laid off. And so we ended up with six people who stayed, five of them mothers and one a guy who has no family in the city, and just figured it out. And we cut down our menu really small and decided to start. I was just thinking, like, man, I just laid off like 18 people, and those are my family, and we got neighbors around here. Those were like some of the better off in my
Mhm.
community, and I'm worried about them. What the hell is going to happen to everybody else around here who's just one missed paycheck away from starving? And so I just thought, like, cool, we cut the menu down to make it more efficient. So we didn't have to
Mhm.
cook as many dishes, prep as much stuff, waste as much. I'll just take all this stuff that didn't make it to the menu and we'll pack it up in like little TV dinners. That was literally the thought. I was like, cool, I'll post a little something on Facebook. I'll text the staff and just say, like, if you ever need anything, come on by. We've got these meals put up in the freezer. And I made 85 of them and I posted that on the internet. And I woke up the next morning and it had been shared like thousands of times. And all those meals were gone in 2 hours. And we did it again the next day and we made twice as many and all those meals were gone in 2 hours.
Mhm.
And meanwhile we're cooking all this food um, for paid orders. So people are going crazy with the paid orders. We had our busiest day, the day we closed permanently and never sold food again. It was the busiest day the tandem ever had on record because people wanted to be so supportive. And meanwhile, I don't know what the hell coronavirus is, but I'm like, I don't know if we're going to make people sick. Right now, we're getting sloppy. We're making way more food than we've ever had to sell out the front door. I'm in the back trying to scramble stuff together. They're telling us not to wear masks. It was just like chaos.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, we have to choose one or the other. And I think we should choose helping our neighbors. And
Yeah.
everyone on the staff was like, yep, cool. And so that's what we did. We started running on donations the third day into our pandemic times and did it for a year and a half.
Wow. And I believe the number I have may be incorrect, but it was around 115,000 meals that were served.
I stopped
Maybe
keeping
more than
real
that?
good. I stopped keeping real good count at 110 because I was just
Wow.
tired. And then a guy kind of robbed us who worked for us. And then we kind of passed off part of the meal. So it got a little hairy, but it was a lot
Yeah,
of meals. Yeah, it
sure,
was definitely at least
sure.
115,000. I'll say that.
Yeah. When you chose to step away permanently after this period, did you have, I mean, what were some of the lessons that you took away from this? Like, how did this experience, not only the experience of, seeing such an immense need for food at this time, but also just as a business owner who, was, experiencing a business loss, that sort of thing. Like, what were you going through during that time?
Honestly, it didn't feel like a business loss to me
Mm,
because I could have reopened. I had a
sure.
menu ready, I had a hiring plan, and really, I had learned a lot during the pandemic, and it was doing this alone is impossible.
Yeah.
Like my partner, my wife, she supports me. My family supports me. My friends support me. Our customers support me and us. But truly, it was alone. And it got to be too much. And during the pandemic, that kind of melted away, right? Like
Mhm.
there was a community of it. I didn't have to worry about the fundraising. Somebody went over there and put out the link for people to donate. And I didn't have to worry about how we're tracking the food because a complete stranger was like, let me digitize all your shit so you can keep your records. Like it operated like a healthy nonprofit like Kinship does, in that like I was running at the front saying, here I go. And there was a lot of support coming behind that. Um, and I just thought I couldn't open the restaurant again. I was too tired. I have my own issues. I have no business owning a bar. I was just like, I gotta change my life a little bit. And this
Sure.
is no long, I am not the person I was when I started this. And so it's time for me to move on.
Mhm, mhm. You did end up gifting the restaurant later. Can you tell me a little bit about what prompted you to do that? I've never heard of this before. This is
I
new
hadn't
to me,
either. I
so
think I made it up. It was just like I remember the amount I had to raise $125,000 to be able to open a business at 18th and Fond du Lac in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So
Wow.
that doesn't even get you started on how much it costs to open a spot in the third ward or any place else. And we fought hard, tooth and nail, to establish that space as a place for people to come have a night out, which was hard in itself. Or that we were the only business on the block, really. Um, and so we had done all that work. We had made it what it was, and truly, so many people were participant in the restaurant that people had put money in it. I hurt my ankle once, and for 4 months, like customers and neighbors would come volunteer to help make sure a bunch of 21-year-olds who were running the restaurant didn't burn it to the ground. Uh, we've had tax trouble where I've had a levy come out of my bank account. I thought, fuck, what am I going to do? And a neighbor who had a mortgage loan for her house from the Fondy Farmers Market was like, I'll lend you the $4,000 you need to cover your payroll. Like everybody put money into that. Everybody put their heart into it. And we had hundreds of employees over time. So
Mhm.
I could have just closed it and walked away. But then I'd have to figure out how to sell everything inside, and selling all of it, just selling any of it didn't feel right.
Sure.
And so I just thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could give someone a lift? Not like do the job for them, but all the chairs are there. You have any idea how much restaurant furniture costs?
Mm-mm. But
I'll
I mean,
tell you, I'll tell you, it's not the same as the
that
dining room
sounds
table in your house. Like it's
right.
built to withstand 30 years of like being bumped into and banged into with trays. And so I just thought, we have all this stuff there that I don't want anymore. We have this space that really meant something to a lot of people. And I want to make sure somebody has enough of a running start that they can open at 18th and Fond du Lac,
Yeah.
doing whatever the hell they want to do. And so that was the idea. We ultimately gifted all of the things inside the building to the building owners
Mhm.
and the management to ensure that like if somebody couldn't make it, then they didn't sell off everything and leave the building vacant for nobody to occupy in the future. The idea is that like maybe a couple people try getting in there over the years, but they'll always have that furniture. They'll always have those pots and pans. They'll always have the extra deep fryers, like all of that.
Mhm. Mhm. Where do you think this generosity stems from? Because one thing that, and I know a lot of people say this about you, is you just sort of keep it real, and the things that you've done, you sort of just like, yeah, I just, came to and did it. And I mean, I'm inspired by you. I know a lot of other people in the community are inspired by the things that you've done and how you kind of keep pushing and continue to do so, even in the face of challenges, which I just love to see. But where do you think that comes from in your background, or, you know, how
I
did you
always
build
joke
that tenacity?
I always joke that it was because when I was raised Catholic and Mother Teresa was like really hot in my elementary years. You know what I mean? Like that was the
Right.
thing. Like give all your possessions away and go live with hookers in Calcutta. Like
Yeah,
that
sure.
was vibes. But ultimately I think it
That's gonna be
was,
one of my favorite quotes.
yeah. Like I was like, I'm
Mother
gonna be
Teresa
like
was a vibe.
her.
I love it.
Yeah. But ultimately, because I'm clearly not Catholic, even though I work for a Catholic organization, ultimately, I was raised by a single mother in like a star in a, like we didn't have fancy shit growing up,
Mhm.
but I had support and community, and we always had enough, right? Like we always had. I didn't know what a peach was until I was 18 years old. Never had tasted one in my life. Swear to you.
No.
And I had one. I was like, "What the is this? Like, who's been hiding this fruit from me?" Same with the cherry. We always had oranges, bananas, grapes, apples. Like the inexpensive stuff that could sustain a little kid. We always had, but it was because we always had community around us and people looking out for one another. Right? We had neighbors who made sure I had a babysitting job when I was 11, so I could buy my little shoes or rollerblades. Or I worked at a summer camp where you know, it was Catholic as well. And there was, for every one of me who like scraped my little money with the help of my friends and family to go there was some kid who was there from like Detroit who was on a scholarship. And I got to see like,
Mhm.
damn, we're in the same place. We come from like theoretically similar backgrounds, but because I'm white and this happens to be the community I'm in, I'm not fucked. And
Mhm.
like, because you're black and you're over here, your obstacles are different. And I think it just hit home a lot to me about like if I got it, you can have it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because hundreds of times in my life, somebody looked at me and said, I got it, you can have it. Like you need help figuring this out.
Yeah.
And I think we all do. There's too much, we're too possessive as a culture, in my opinion. Just
Yeah.
because truly all of this is ethereal, it's all transient. This is all, if you look at the place I'm sitting in 40 years, it might just be trees, right? Or it could
Yeah.
be a metropolis. Like none of this is very, you can't take it with you,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
you can take your actions and the way that you treated other people with you.
And actually, that brings me into, you've been sort of involved in the food space, but, in our conversations in the past, we've kind of talked about some of the things the city needs to do as a whole. So what are the things that, that we need to do to work together better to address, social challenges across the city?
I am often, they say I operate at the speed of Caitlin at my new job because they're like, this is not how like shit works. Like there's
Mhm.
pacing and you do plans and whatever. And there is something to be said about that. But I think as a city, if we're less afraid to try new things,
Mhm.
because they might fail, we're going to learn a lot. Every failure, my whole life, my whole career has been a failure. And I've learned something along every step of the way. That's why I feel confident trying new things, because if you're afraid to fail, then you never actually evolve, you never learn, you never grow. And I think Milwaukee's actually getting there. Maybe not necessarily like in City Hall, but as a culturally and as small business owners and as different organizations and institutions, people are starting to take chances, fail up a little. I think also we have to stop. We got to cut the bullshit and start talking to people truly, about how we feel, right? And there's a lot of discomfort about saying the wrong thing or being the wrong thing, or what about this building? Everybody said it was a good idea, and then everyone said it was racist gentrification. Like, those conversations don't need to happen over here where you feel one way and over here where you feel the other. Like, we need to communicate with one another about why things are hurting one community or another, why somebody's pissed about something or happy about something. Because, like many northern cities of the 21st century, we just split everybody into little pockets. And so nobody knows what anybody else is up to. And I think we got to get to know each other again. And that's easy for me to say because I'm a white woman and I'm not from here, right? So I come from another very segregated city on the other side of Lake Michigan, that has not figured that out, right?
Yeah.
That is making its own progress and making its own mistakes and trying to figure it out. I think every step forward is worthwhile, but we have a lot of healing to do as a city.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think that you're one of those people that people listen to. And
Maybe too much.
no, I
I
mean,
don't
I
know
think
what the fuck I'm talking
you have a
about.
voice in the community, and you offer sort of a refreshing perspective, in my opinion. And so, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I
Yeah,
can't believe it's 2 times in 1 month.
I know, right?
I love it.
And I just want to quickly remind our viewers that the conversation doesn't have to end here, because we're going to be posting a recap of our conversation with Caitlin on the Technically website, and then sharing her story in our next weekly newsletter. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Caitlin, and best of luck over there at Community Food Community Center.
Thank you for having me, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.